Hey, I'm back. It's next week already. I forgot about the Morris bits, as Jamie just pointed out. So Adam's been working on the Morris subframe builds. So last week I showed all of the suspension arms, subframe parts back from powder coat and Xylan coat. We're now well through the build-up of that. So the front subframe's been built up with the suspension arms and the hub carriers. I think the hubs have been fitted to the carriers. The engine's on the subframe, and then lurking upstairs somewhere, the rear subframe I've seen has now got the suspension arms and hubs and hub carriers on it. All new bushes fitted. It's an interesting sort of almost a painful process on that, and that we bought new arms for it because the originals are really quite pitted. They come with bushes in them, but the surface finish is not really acceptable on the arms. So we end up taking the bushes out and replacing them with new, even though they were already new, just so in the interest of getting a decent surface finish on the suspension arms themselves. Anyway, that's where we're at with that. It really is time to hand over to Nat now. So over to Nat.
Well, thank you, Cal, for the first part of the tour, and over to here, and we're in the dusty room, the dusty body shop, back with Morris again, where sanding continues. We've solved the polyester issues that we had. We've had a problem with supply of the polyester spray surfacer that we normally use. We used a different one, which Gaz's synopsis was less than brilliant on. It wasn't very good. It was okay in terms of it was polyester and it was applied to the car, but the build was less than anticipated. Didn't sand amazingly. Basically, we didn't like it. So we've now obtained some Max Mayer polyester. We've been around the house a little bit, but we've now got some Max Mayer polyester, which is very good. So we should be on the final polyester deal, we think now. Hopefully, all being well, but it's certainly looking pretty good so far. So yeah, Gaz and Steve sanding polyester again now. Hopefully the last of the polyester, fingers crossed. So really, that's pretty much where we're at this time. There's just a lot of sanding. I can't really elaborate too far on that. There's lots of sanding, lots of detail work, and hopefully no more polyester. We might be approaching primer, we think, hopefully. So watch this space, we'll see what develops. Behind camera, just over there, I'm not going to go in, but behind camera over there, Morris is continuing. However, it's basically more sanding. We've hit the point where we've done the extra coat polyester on the roof. There was a couple of undulations in the roof that we hadn't actually picked up previously. We thought the roof was generally pretty good, but we've actually discovered a couple of spots in the roof that needed a little bit more attention. And on one of those, we've gone through on the polyester, so we've had to put another coat of polyester on the roof. And on the rear wings, Gaz is actually blocking those as we speak. He's knocked up a couple of acrylic blocks for getting the final undulations out of those, some flexible acrylic blocks, just to try and get the final undulations out of those, and they've gone through the polyester in a fair few places, so we're going to need another coat of polyester on those just to get those finished and absolutely level. The problem with if you break through the polyester anywhere completely, then you start to set up undulations in the surface, because obviously the metal sands at a totally different rate to the polyester around it. So as soon as you break through, you set up undulations in the surface. So he's blocking those as best as he can now, and then he's going to do another coat of polyester on those tomorrow, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, that should be those there in terms of build and basic blocking. So that's where we're at on Morris. I think Jamie will tell me if I've missed anything, but I think we've got the bulk of Churchill there. So yeah, next week we should see a door assembled, I think, and a quarter starting to take shape. And then we'll go this way and have a quick look at the Morris, because we're a step closer to not sanding it anymore. The Morris is now in primer. Finally, this is now in, again, we use the same high anti-corrosion content epoxy. It's a zinc-rich epoxy anti-corrosion primer, but it's also a high build. It's actually a high build epoxy anti-corrosion primer. So this is now painted in that, and it's looking pretty good. It's been a long slog to get there. We knew it was going to be a long slog, but as always, it's been an even longer one than we expected. But it is actually looking remarkably close to the right shape and a good finish now. So the next job on this will be to do the underside and inside finishing, so that all surfaces are sealed and there's no exposed metal anywhere. And then we wet flat this primer. We actually wet flat the final, because it's now epoxied and sealed, we make sure the rest of the car's sealed, and then we'll wet flat this to get the final finish, to make sure that's all good. And hopefully we won't need to retouch the epoxy anywhere. If we do, we do. But hopefully we can wet block all that, get the final prep, and we'll wet block that to 800 grit, and as long as we're happy with all the profiles, wet block to 800 grit, then we can go on with the final base coat and clear coat. So fingers crossed, we're getting a lot closer. The panels are ready, I believe now ready for epoxy as well. So it's pretty close. Gaz has just hopped off onto another little job on the, which Cal will, I think, have mentioned, doing the Escort door skins. He's now prepping those. But as soon as they're done, he'll be back on to epoxying the panels for this, and then we'll be at the stage where we're all at primer and we can do all the undercoating and all the other work apart from the primer. We do that at that stage because it means that anything that blows onto the primer surface just gets blocked off when we block the primer. So you don't have to be quite so fastidious with your masking, and you don't have to take quite so much care with everything. If a little bit of something blows through the masking, it's not going to be the end of the world because we'll just be blocking it off. So we do it, and that's the reason for doing it in that order. But yay, Morris is in primer. So watch this space. We'll see more bits of Morris in primer hopefully next week, depending on how everything else goes. So hope you enjoyed this little insight this week, and hopefully next week we might be able to squeeze in another autofocus episode where we can enlighten people a bit more on maybe some more metal work, hopefully. So until then, have fun, and we shall see you soon. And as we can see, I'll go up this side and not trip over any wings. The Morris is now had the next phase, which was, we'd had the epoxy on the outside of the Morris last week. The next step on this week is that the Raptor, I mean other jobs have been going on as well, but the main step forward on the body is that the Raptor is now on. And yeah, when we've used that, because the inside's being largely trimmed, all the areas that are having trim over them are now done with, we're now covered in black Raptor. It's U-Pole Raptor truck bed line, sprayable. I think most of you will be aware of that we use that. It's a sprayable truck bed liner that we use on underbody and in car on everything we build basically. We don't always do it black. It can be tinted body colour, and we often do it tinted body colour, but the owner's choice on this one was to go for black. So that's a black finish. It's very, very hard, very, very chip resistant, very tough. And that's been applied over our zinc metal spray process, which means that the chances of underbody corrosion are basically zero for a large chunk of the foreseeable future. We don't really issue a warranty period other than the fact that there won't be any reasonable corrosion for any reasonable period of time. And even if it's damaged underneath, the results of that damage should be very confined in terms of the chipping shouldn't cause any corrosion to get under the coating, because the zinc metal spray will act sacrificially and prevent that travelling underneath. So yeah, that's all tough coated, built to be used, not just looked at. That's all on now. There should be hopefully some nice footage of bits of that. And yeah, that's where we're at on that. So the next phase is, I think I touched on last time, actually skipping around a little bit, I think I touched last time on why we do this in the order we do. Now we've got the Raptor on the underside and inside and primer on all of the other surfaces. It means that effectively all the bare steel is then sealed in by this point. So we can now put, once we've seam sealed it in the engine bay, we can now put water on this. We will put film in the aperture to try and stop it spreading all over the place too much. But basically we can now wet block, as a final process, wet block the epoxy primer to get the final 800 grit finish on the shell that we'll use to do the final paint over. So that's why we've done it in that order. And then the next step is all the removable panels that are sort of around me here will all be getting to that stage as well. So they're going to have the Raptor applied to the back faces of them, then they can be demasked. The car will all be built back up again to check it, or check to a final check on all the fits, and all the epoxy will then be blocked, and then it's ready for final paint. So that's getting very, very close now. So yeah, that should be pretty nice to see. It's not too far away. The Morris is now in the paint booth, masked up, ready for final paint. So if not tomorrow, I would think it'll be Monday for paint on that. I'm being guarded in my statements here, but that should be beginning of next week in final paint. Obviously the Escort's gone next door. Carol will have probably been past, will have covered that. Carol will have covered that. And Gaz and Steve are doing the final prep on the last few little bits and bobs for the Morris, the last few panels. I think all the main panels are prepped, but they're just doing the final bits like I can see Steve working on now, the slam panel and the front radiator cross member and the various sort of more mechanical parts that need painting to go on that. The inside of the car is now painted. The inside of the doors is now painted. Obviously, it's a different colour inside to the external colour, as mentioned before, as mentioned last week. Well, that's now done. The inside of the doors is painted, so it is just the outside of the shell, outside of the doors, all the other external panels, and then the sort of various more mechanical bits that need painting. So it's very, very close. Basically, next week, all fully painted.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Nat. And I don't know if you could hear in the background, while he was doing his bit, the general swearing and joyous screams that were probably coming from in here as we frantically tried to get this rolling, which, as you can see, we have. So this sort of is concluding what is an insanely busy week, or it seems to have been. You probably noticed that the amount of stuff that Nat talked about through there was massive, and then the amount of stuff that's gone on here is insane as well. So last week, this wasn't even painted. I think those that follow us on social, so Facebook, Instagram, will have already seen some pictures of it painted. So yeah, here it is. Probably not the colour most people were expecting. I'm really happy with it. It's one of those that's actually split opinion here. I've always been really in favour of it. It's kind of split the opinion of the guys, and I've always said I think when you see it, you'll come around to it. And it stems obviously from the customer's choice primarily. We're sort of doing what I would describe as a modern take on a 70s hot rod sort of look. And from very early on, he was keen on purple. We did some renders for the project, none of which were in purple, to try and explore a few different avenues, but it all kept coming back to purple. He talks about Ford purple velvet, which I'm not mad keen on, so we looked at doing some kind of variations on that theme that popped a bit more and I felt had a slightly more modern look to it. And the colour we've eventually gone for is actually a custom mix we've done. It's based on the BMW / Rolls-Royce Twilight purple colour, which is it's pretty much a current model, Rolls and BMW colour. And then we've put quite a lot of an additional crystal pearl additive in it, which has given it a much stronger flip between how it looks in the light and how it looks in the shadow. And it's given it a slightly bluer tone, just takes it a little bit away from the slightly pinker end of the spectrum that the standard colour has. So yeah, absolutely loving that. And then yeah, we brought this shell through here today. Must have been through here about 11 o'clock in the morning, I think. It must be about 5 o'clock now, we've just gone 4. And yeah, we've just been getting everything in it, and because we've planned through everything reasonably well in terms of the subframes, engine, gearbox, everything was ready to go, so it's just been a case of getting it all bolted in. So although it's resting on some metal bars at the moment, which are keeping it at this ride height for the moment until we get the final coilovers made, it is possible to roll it round. So what we've decided to do on this one is get it rolling, get all the panels bolted on, and do that before we do the wet sanding and buffing of the paintwork. For a couple of reasons. A, it's easier to do the flatting and polishing of the panels with the panels on the car, and we wanted to do the final fit up of all those panels in here, and B, it's just easier to roll it around with it actually on its wheels rather than on a trolley. So it just made sense to get it in here, get some of the parts on it. It also frees up a bit of storage space as well. Get it rolling, get the rest of the panels on, which Gaz has just painted today. And then we're going to get this back through into the body shop sometime next week, I would imagine. But once we've got all the doors fitted up and latching and the bonnet and boot lid and wings on, and then they'll go through, wet sand it all, polish it all up, and then we'll get it back round in here to do the final build. So extremely exciting times on this one, and I can't wait to see it all sort of take shape. We've obviously done a hell of a lot in the dry build stage when it was bare metal. We built almost everything mechanically on it then, so the mechanical side of things should go together reasonably straightforward. I've no doubt there'll be some complications, there always is, but yeah, looking forward to getting stuck into it. Morris. So we've been on with basically panel fit up. I don't think I had the doors on last week, and I definitely didn't have the wings on, so I went ahead and got the doors fitted up, got all those adjusted and aligned, got the latches on. If you remember from the metalwork stage, it's running mini door latches on this, just to give it a better quality latch that's got external moving parts so we can do remote central locking onto it. So I got those on and aligned, and then a couple of days later, the wings. We've got these rubber gaskets running around there, so there's a bit of time involved in getting the positioning of those really nice, so they just sit nicely there. Front wings on, got the slam panel on. Really wanted to just get that in there just to make sure the inner wing alignment was all good on it. And then John has started cracking on with the plumbing work. So we've got the fuel pump and filter into its cradle, and that's mounted up underneath. We tackled a lot of all the component mounting was tackled whilst it was bare metal. So Stu had already made the pump cradle and had all the fasteners ready for that. So they'd already been Xylan coated. The cradle had already been powder coated. So it's now mainly just assembling components together. So we've got the pump and filter in there. We've got the remote servo mounted in the back here, which we'd already made the brackets for. The pedal box is going in, which again, we'd already done all the mounting work for that when it was bare metal. And we're just going through making up all the lines. So John's been doing the lines in the back between the remote servo and the bulkhead fittings, the lines in the front between the master cylinders and the bulkhead fittings at the front. He's then going to be making up the lines that run under the car and clipping all those into place, and just working through mechanical stuff. We're not going to go too far with any trim related stuff because we've still got to do the wet sanding and polishing on the paintwork. But we figured it was a good opportunity at this stage to just make some headway on the mechanical side of things. We're going to start with Morris. So John's been largely working on this over the course of the last few days. We've been doing the plumbing work. So we planned all the plumbing routing at the metalwork stage, and there are holes in the shell for anywhere where bulkhead fittings go through. There are holes in the shell for riv nuts to mount everything, or threaded bosses welded to the shell for that. So it's been going through and actually starting to lay some of that plumbing through. So in the back there, we've got on bracketry that we'd already designed before, the remote servo, because as you can fairly obviously see, there's not room for a servo in the engine bay. And with it being a road car, it did really want servo assisted brakes. So there's a remote servo in the back there. And then John's now done the lines between the master cylinders and these bulkhead fittings, which will come out to a reservoir which sits here. Now, if you remember when we were at the metalwork stage, we did a 3D printed version of what will be a billet machined aluminium reservoir that sits here. So we were mocking that up as well just to work out the routing up to that. We've then done the outlet feeds from the master cylinders, which come through a set of holes down in the tunnel down here. The clutch one comes forward and across the cross member and back to the clutch, so it doesn't have to cross the routing of the exhaust. And then we've got the front and rear feeds. They run down the tunnel, attached to a set of welded bosses that run down the inside face of the tunnel, and they were all spaced at metalwork, so you can actually get through the holes in the backbone that links the rear diff and the gearbox, and you can get through the holes in that to do the bolts up. They run to another set of bulkhead fittings in the back there, which feed to the master cylinders on the remote servo. The rear circuit one comes back through another bulkhead fitting to the rear axle. Those lines are all done. And then there's another, the front feed then comes back up a set of clips on the tunnel. T-piece is off a T-piece at the front here and splits out to the front brakes. And then there's also the vacuum line, which is attached on a same set of clips that run that front line forward. There's a vacuum line running from the throttle bodies back to obviously the diaphragm on the servo with a one-way valve in it. And that pretty much ties up the brake plumbing. It's braided throughout, so we've done Teflon line --3 hose, stainless steel overbraiding on it, and they're swage type fittings, so you can get the type of fitting that's reusable where you can actually put an olive in it and you can screw up the back part, and they can be disassembled and redone with a new olive. On this we go with the swage type fittings. They're just a little bit more confidence inspiring. So we mock them all up and then we take them to a hose place to crimp them and pressure test them all. We just have to mark the orientation on there. But yeah, does a really nice job of it. We've had sort of thoughts in the past over whether the slight amount of give that you kind of envisage there might be in this type of flexible hose versus a solid metal line gives you any type of sponginess on the brake pedal, but in all honesty, in all the cars we've ever built, when we've done quite a lot in hardline and quite a lot in full braided throughout, and I can't honestly say I've noticed any noticeable change, and especially on a car where it's going to have a servo assistance anyway, we tend to go with braided flexible lines throughout. So that's where we're at with that. We've done the fuel plumbing too. We've not connected up to the tank because we're waiting for the tank to be fabricated. But Stu had already made a cradle that holds the fuel pump and filter under the sort of rear of the bulkhead there at the back. It basically sits just above the diff nose. and we've done the fuel lines running all the way through up to the fuel rail, regulators mounted down here on a bracket that we did when we were at the metalwork phase. So fuel plumbing's done, brake plumbing almost there, just a few more clips to put on, servo vacuum plumbing's done. So yeah, we're making good progress on that lot. We've got some of the interior stuff in progress on this as well. So Stu had already made the centre console in steel and the lower dash in steel. Last week Dean took over with those, foamed them and leathered them, so they're done in like a really dark charcoal, almost black leather. And then the rest of the interior is going to be following on soon. He's patterned the leather for the seats, which are going to be two-tone, so they're dark leather on the sides with a lighter grey leather in the centre section. And he was just holding fire on one little job we wanted to do on the seats, which was to put a fairly strong anchorage point on the side of the backrest to put a loop on for the seat belt to pass through. When we did the metalwork on the shell, the only real place with any sort of structural strength to it that you could put a seatbelt anchorage is actually in the section below the rear window here. So we put those vertical braces in, the ones with the punch swaged holes in, to strengthen up that area, so it was reasonably rigid. So we'll have the inertia reels down the bottom, and they come up over what will be effectively the shoulder mount on the bottom of the window frame there. But it's quite low down, and it means that the belt will be going up and over your shoulder, which obviously in an accident is not ideal because it will be compressing down on you. So because we couldn't find a better position anywhere in there, the plan has always been to add some structure into the seat to hold the seat belt higher. So we took some of the foam apart on the seat and basically welded a section onto the metalwork of the backrest on the seat, which will later on have a billet machined guide attached to it, so the seatbelt will run over that guide so it's held up higher. So that kind of all falling into place as per the plan. Hopefully the seats will be done in a couple of weeks' time, and we're just forging ahead with mechanical stuff. We won't go too far before we pop the shell back through to the body shop to wet sand and buff it all to get the final finish. This is just a from the gun finish at the moment, but while they were making a bit of a head start with the Land Cruiser prep work, we just wanted to get some mechanical work done on this.